Right. Congressman, thank you for joining us. What are your thoughts on Senator Johnson's proposal about Israeli aid and possibly linking it to cutting funding to the IRS?
Well, look, I think that as a standalone measure, the most fundamental thing is we should protect Israel's sovereignty. Right now, there's all this pressure domestically and internationally to interfere with Israel's ability to exact justice from Hamas. I mean, Hamas massacred Israeli citizens, and of course, Israel has the right to expect an unconditional surrender by Hamas and the full return of their hostages that they continue to hold.
That being said, are you in favor of just a straight aid package with no strings attached to Israel? And do you think that that should be a standalone and not be packaged in with further aid for Ukraine like the president wants?
Well, I definitely oppose the president's idea. Lumping this with Ukraine, they're separate issues, and frankly, the Ukraine issue, the president continues to avoid defining the mission that they're trying to achieve. I mean, frankly, the Deputy Secretary of State has said the mission is regime change in Russia, including war crimes tribunals for Vladimir Putin. You know, that's effectively World War III. I'm not sure that's what Biden administration is trying to achieve. I doubt that's what Ukraine's trying to achieve. But the reality is we not only don't have a defined mission, we don't have real oversight and accountability over the funds in Ukraine. So I think that will unnecessarily interfere with a cleaner debate about what we should do with Israel. But frankly, I would rather see this package for Israel subject to amendment and debate. It is a little bit disjointed in terms of the logic. And we're having briefings on it tomorrow to kind of break down why it's structured the way that it is. And I think there are people that are still kind of weighing, why is this component in there? Why isn't there some other things in the bill? So, you know, to say that any one part of it's perfect yet, I think is premature.
I understand, but that being said, would you prefer just to have it as just straight aid with, like I said, none of these other strings attached? The speaker has made an impression anyway that you can't have the Israel aid without cutting funding for the IRS. I mean, that's one of the contingencies on that.
Well, what he's specifically, that's one of the things that he laid out as a pay for. Fundamentally, he's saying, look, we shouldn't just borrow money to give to anybody or to spend in general. So we have a massive deficit, and the principle is we should pay for it. The IRS is viewed as a pay for. There's debate about it. Fine, pick a different pay for. We can cut funding to the UN, for example. Some of these countries will hate us for free. We don't have to send them money for the fact that they hate us. We've got countries we're giving foreign aid to that never vote with us at the UN, let alone the problems with the UN, that won't even take a position in opposition to what Hamas has done. So I think there's a lot of frustration with the UN at this point. We could look at that as a pay for. We could look at any number of other things, but the idea isn't to link the two, it's to find a way to pay for the spending.
Did you get a chance to review my stories on train bridges in Butler County and parts of your district? And you know, what was your reaction to that? What was your reaction to some of the things that we were able to discover?
Yeah, I thought it was incredibly well written. If anyone hasn't read it, I would encourage them to read it. It really laid out a problem. And look, our county engineer, Greg Wilkinson, is a great engineer. He's doing the right thing and checking these bridges, which he isn't really obligated to do, but it is a public safety concern for local residents. And it kind of begs the question is, shouldn't more be done on this? And frankly, the railroads have been unresponsive to local governments. They've been unresponsive to state governments, and frankly, they were pretty unresponsive to the federal government. So there's a lot of frustration with the railroad companies at this point, and this is just one of the latest issues. And I really think it was a great job unearthing it, highlighting it, and it was a well-written story.
What could or should Congress do about this particular issue and rail safety in general? I'm sure you know your Ohio counterparts in the Senate have issued a joint bill that would toughen rail safety standards. Have you got a chance to look at that? Is that something you're in favor of? What else can Congress do on this?
Well, I don't think we've had adequate hearings in the House on it. You know, I'm on financial services and foreign affairs, not transportation. But when I talk to my colleagues on transportation, you know, most of the attention has been paid by the rail companies to the Senate, and they've been a little less responsive to the House. I would definitely like to have hearings in the House where we can have questions about these kinds of issues. And frankly, when I read your article, we started looking at, you know, is there existing legislation to kind of encompass this issue with rail safety, not just the engines. That's kind of the nature of the bill that Senator Vance and Senator Brown are on, but with the infrastructure in the railroads themselves, the bridges and everything. Is that getting enough attention? And you could easily see where it could be a problem.
What's your position or prediction, should I say, what's your prediction about a possible government shutdown at this point? Do you think it's possible, likely, unlikely? I mean, we have a new leadership who seems to be a little bit more hardline.
Well, I certainly hope there isn't a shutdown. The government is funded till November 17th. I think we've got time. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was bipartisan legislation that passed the House, the Senate, and Joe Biden agreed to it, raised the debt limit, but it also had a continuing resolution that cuts spending by 1% after January 1st. Now we got to get to January 1st before that, but what Speaker Johnson has laid out is a plan to either go into the end of January or as far out as April. Surely there's something between January and April that we can negotiate and agree on. What we're not going to agree to, though, is a Christmas surprise, like has been sort of a sacred tradition, is kick the can down the road till right before Christmas, and then you get a giant omnibus 4,000-page bill that comes out at 2 in the morning, and it's supposed to pass before anyone can read it at lunchtime the next day. That is not going to happen in the House, and it's not because we want to shut the government down. We're just going to break that status quo.
Would you be in favor, though, of just passing a clean continuing resolution just to keep it going before November 17th? With no strings attached?
I'm in favor of passing something out as far as, well, the string attached is that if you get past January 1st, there's a 1% cut. That's already in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and yeah, I'm opposed to anything that goes into December. It's got to go out, at least until the Senate says they can get their bills done. The House went without a speaker for 3 weeks, but we've got almost 75% of our spending bills passed. The Senate has zero. They've passed nothing. So, the Senate needs to show that they actually have a plan to pass some form of spending measure, and that needs to be reconciled with the bills we're passing in the House. They want to avoid reconciling anything with the House and just jam us, and we're not going to roll over and accept that.
So what are your thoughts about Speaker Johnson, and where's the fight over the speakership left the GOP on the House?
Speaker Johnson earned the job because he's an incredibly good man. People trust him and respect him. He showed that you can be conservative and kind, and he has very few enemies in the House. And everybody agreed that they could work with him because he laid out a good plan, and a lot of it was the stuff that we just talked about, is we're not going to go along with the status quo. We all campaigned against it. We've fought to pass our spending bills, and we've passed 70+% of them at this point. We need to make the Senate vote on them, and then if they won't take up our bills, the alternative isn't that we just do nothing. The alternative is that we negotiate over what they want. They want to give no negotiation and just say, here's the package, take this or we're shutting the government down. And that's a false choice, and we're just not going to accept it. And Speaker Johnson made a persuasive case that he's going to oppose that.
Any reaction to the recent reports that he's been tied to efforts to promote conversion therapy and potentially criminalize gay sex, and some of these other reports that have come out?
Yeah, I don't believe that's true. Look, I think there's no surprise that that there's an attack machine trying to tear down Speaker Johnson. That's the nature of politics these days. But he's an incredibly good man. I have a hard time believing that he would support any of that.
Anything I didn't ask that you wanted to add?
I feel like we are united. We did say in the House that we take a little while to work together. As I said from the get-go, it's going to be hard for everyone to trust any one person, but we can unite behind a good plan. And I think the thing that's overlooked, Speaker Johnson earned the job because he is a good man, but he also laid out a good plan, and I feel like we're ready to execute on that.
Congressman, thank you so much for squeezing me in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time.